Okay.
Good to go.
Well, good evening. My name is Shannon Luthi, owner of Steakhouse Seven. I started Steakhouse Seven kind of the tail end of 2019, but officially launched in January of 2020. It came about as a passion, the last 30, 40 years of just cooking, different events, used to compete, just a lot of different charity cooks. That's kind of what really got the fire burning. Was, I don't know if you've heard of Shiloh Ranch Ministries. They're over by Solomon, and what they do is they use horses to help kids that have been abused and help in their therapy. And every year they did a open house prior to COVID, and they would have 500 people out there. My uncle and I would get the big trailer smoker out, and we would do that cook, and there was a lot of joy in seeing how happy good food makes people. Okay, so that's kind of what started the idea in my head. Was, boy, if I could ever pull that off, that'd be my dream job. I guess that was probably back in the late. It was like 90. It was like 2015 probably when all that was going on, and then decided to take the plunge. My wife and I had set up our house to where we didn't have car payments, we didn't have credit card debt, so we didn't need a lot of money to survive. And so that gave us, and she's got a very good paying job, she's a nurse, and so that gave us the ability to try this out, which is a good thing because in 2020 our sales were $527 because of COVID. So COVID really wasn't a big deal till spring of 2020 is when it really started shutting everything down. So all the avenues that we had opened up were pretty much instantly closed. But we kept struggling through doing farmers markets here in town. Had set up with a grocery store in Abilene, friends with Chris West, so he kind of helped me get started in the retail side of things. And then as we went on, we discovered, we learned a lot through selling through West, that we could, things we needed to tweak and how we needed to grow. And thankfully, I decided to start this business with cash and just cash flow the whole thing. And I didn't want to lay in bed at night worrying how I'm going to make a payment to the bank, especially now that COVID's got a lot of things shut down. My wife was a big inspiration. She was a huge help. She was my biggest cheerleader. And at that point in time, we were basically just doing the farmers markets, and then later in the year got into the grocery stores, and that's when I moved into here. And this company could not have grown and gotten where it is now without the help of the temple and Mary and the ability to rent that kitchen. That's been a godsend, and very blessed to have that. So we expanded into probably now, if you go to the end of 22, we were in 15 stores, ranging from Clay Center to Wichita, from Manhattan to Wilson. So we've kind of this whole central Kansas area, looking to get in with a couple of distributors that'll take it even further. I've had the thought of doing that for probably the last 6 months or so, but with all the shipping issues, a majority of the spices and rubs that I use aren't grown in the United States. So you have to worry about whether that cinnamon is going to get here from Vietnam, or if that pepper is going to get here from Malabar or whatever. We have used domestic as much as possible, and that's probably one of the things that sets us apart from all the other rubs you see on the shelf, is that we go for quality first. And we use garlic and onion that's grown out in California, and we buy it right from the garlic and onion farm. It has way more flavor than the stuff you buy in the store, which usually says made in China. Who knows how long that stuff's been on the shelf? I know this stuff was either, depending on when I buy it, either that year's harvest or the tail end of the year before's harvest, which allows me, in the rubs the spices that I use for the rubs, I buy directly from spice importers, and that cuts out all the middlemen. Firstly, for price. Second, for shelf life. I'm able to put a 2-year expiration date on all my stuff because I do that. And feel very confident. I've got one importer that's given me a 3-year expiration date. The problem is not all my spices come from him, so I have to use the lesser year between the two. I may have one product from a 2-year company and everything else from a 3-year. I still got to call it a 2-year expiration, which is fine. So we've changed our packaging a couple times. That was with Chris's help. You know, he says when we had a resealable package, more like a pouch, and that didn't retail well because they were kind of like dominoes, and the 3-year-old in the cart could do that, and all 10 packages would fall. So we went to a jar that holds either 5 or 6 ounces of rub, depending on the intensity of it. So our best income stream, you know, when we started, I've been in management in different businesses for my whole career. I've been a parts manager at a John Deere dealership and sales manager in another place. And so the business aspect was never a challenge. Kind of had a plan before we launched it as to how we wanted to grow and avenues, but I've always believed in multiple income streams. And that's where the farmer's market is one. The website that we launched in 21 is another avenue. We also do in the fall a lot of festivals and trade shows. So that's probably where the biggest income is, actually. I sell a lot more rub to the grocery stores, but the margin is not near as good. Still very good. This is the profit margin is good in this business. But those festivals and stuff, people are always looking for something homemade. And that's just been a real big deal. So as for an example, we make a little sampler pack that's got 1.25 ounces of all 10 of our rubs. And we took 100 of those to Baldwin City last fall to a little festival they got there in that little town, and I sold all 100 the first day. And, you know, $20 a pop, and there you go. You know, so they think it's a great deal. I think it's a great deal, you know, then they can come back and and I still, today, as a matter of fact, had an order shipped to Baldwin City where they bought some of our salt and reordered it. So that's another thing we launched last year was our smoked and infused salts. And that is probably, for dollars, probably as big a part of our income as the rubs are. Simply smoked salts.
Okay.
Yeah, smoked and infused salts. So I buy sea salt from a company in California that comes in a 50-pound bag, and I'll smoke it with either applewood, hickory, or mesquite. And then I've also got some infused salts where I take the salt and infuse it with whiskey and then smoke it over oak. That's the whiskey oak salt that I sell. I sell more of that than I do all the others combined. We also have a hot salt where we make a slurry out of scorpion pepper, pineapple, and guava. And then we infuse the salt with that, and then we add in some really hot pepper flakes. And it's called 7-pot brain strain. That's what the flakes are called. And the pepperheads love that. I mean, it's got good flavor and it's got a lot of heat, so it kind of fits both. You know, you can make a super hot salt that has no flavor, just burn your mouth up. But we wanted something that actually had some flavor. And then our newest one is a wine infused salt. And it's purple, so the K-State people in Manhattan love it. They really wanted to call it cat salt, but I thought probably get into some trademark things. So anyway, so any questions at this point?
So how long does it take you to smoke salt?
The ones that are done with the apple, hickory, and mesquite, we smoke that for 24 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's an item, the reason it hasn't really been in the stores because anything that goes into a store has to be made here. So anything like the rubs and stuff, those all are made here, packaged here. So that all can go into a store. And then the infused salts like the whiskey oak, that's smoked for 12 hours. The hot salt smoked for 12 hours, and the wine infused is not smoked at all because the smoke and the wine kind of didn't play well together on the flavor. So I left the smoke out of that one. So
what is your product line? How many different kinds of?
10 different rubs, 6 different salts. We're getting ready to launch a smoked honey. We're purchased honey from a local honey guy. and we're smoking that.
Is that Alan?
Yes.
So Alan Stovall had his bees here, or his hives, he
Yep.
bottled, and now he's got his own place down at Five
Yep.
Corners. So.
Yep. And Alan and I, remember when he had his inspection, I was here for his inspection, to help him through that. And then I came in a couple times while he was extracting his honey, and we got to be friends. It was kind of cool that we could network like that.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, that's exactly where that honey came from. A 5-gallon bucket of it was 60 pounds of honey. So as soon as the reason we're waiting is that we want it to warm up a little bit, because it needs to be pretty liquid to smoke it. You want to get it up into well, you don't want to get it too hot or you'll kill the good stuff in the honey, but smoking tar is not fun either. So you kind of got to find that fine line where it'll flow. It just makes the whole process a lot easier. We did a test batch last fall. We had a interesting little competition. I went to a festival, or actually it was a craft show down at Hutch, and the same day my wife was doing See and Sell here. And we both had a case of honey, and the bet was who could sell it the fastest, and she ended up winning. She beat me by like 2 minutes, but it went in no time, and I've never seen it before. It's kind of like smoked salt. I go to do the farmer's market in Manhattan every Saturday morning, and I'm amazed at how many people have never heard of smoked salt, but it's something I've been doing for probably 15 years, just at home. So you can put that on a steak or a burger, and you can cook it in the oven, on the skillet, on a gas grill, whatever, and it'll still bring that smoky flavor into the meat, because that meat will soak that salt up and bring that smoke flavor with it.
So do you do any meat products? Is it just all rubs and salt?
At this point, no, another thing we're launching, which isn't really anything we're making, to do meat products, you have to be USDA approved and a certified facility, and probably even an inspector on site to do all that. So no, but I am partnering. One of the latest stores we've partnered up with is Deeks in Clay Center, the meat locker up there, and they're going to private label their line of meat sticks for us. So it'll have a Steakhouse 7 label on it, but it has to say produced by Deeks with the USDA stamp on it. That's a product that fits well with what we do. People kind of expect us to sell meat. I have been dabbling with the catering thing for friends and family. That's a whole other avenue, and probably can't bite that one off until we have our own building, just simply because of the time constraints to bring a smoker here and smoke meat for 12 hours and then package it up and go somewhere else with it. It's going to be too tough when we've got everything else going on. Before we get into that, we also want to do our smoked cheese. I do that for friends and family, and everybody says that they can't believe I don't sell it. And it's cold smoked just like the salt is. So that's it for the meats, but it's not our product. But
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned competitions. Have you done most people that I know that have gone in the barbecue end of it have gotten into the competition. Is that a market for you? People that are in the competition, or is that kind of everybody does their own thing? Everybody does their own thing.
You're not in their opinion, and this is something I've chased for quite a while. My dad, I don't know if he still currently is, but I know up until recently, if nothing else, for years, is a Kansas City Barbecue Society judge. And he's the one that instilled all this love of barbecue to me. Their mentality is, if you don't do your own rub, you're not really a barbecuist. You really, but I will tell you this, Wichita Barbecue, which is as far south as we're going at this point, they do classes, just like most barbecue accessory places do. They've got quite the store down there, but they had a gentleman come in, this has probably been 3 months ago now, it was over the winter. They were going to do a class on how to cook pork butt, and they brought in, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but he's high up on the barbecue circuit. Now, he's not a Mo Quezon or anybody like that, that you've all heard of, but he's up there in the top 10 probably. they hired him to come give this class. And when he came in, he says, they asked what he needed. He goes, well, we're going to need some rub for these. And they limited the class to like 20 people or 25 people. And he says, I'm going to need some rub. And he says, and I want to use that rub right there. And he's pointing to my rub on the shelf. And I've never met the guy, but apparently he'd used it at some point, really liked it. And that was the rub he chose to use for this class. So consequently, I got a lot of orders from Wichita after that happened. So yes, that does help. But to market it to the guy that's actually competing, it's really, they're doing their own thing. And also they'll take 2 and 3 rubs. You know, back when I think my first competition had to have been like 25 years ago, maybe. And I did that. I used 2 and 3 different rubs because I like that combination of flavors, and it did quite well. But that sounds great, but it was way before it blew up like it is today. I think it was 3 years ago, I went to the Kansas City Royal, or the American Royal at the racetrack, and 393 teams there. And my brother-in-law was actually on one of those teams. And they were kind of in the amateur division, but the interesting thing about it was he wanted me to try his brisket rub. He partnered up with these other guys, and they went with this top secret brisket rub. They wanted my opinion. And so I gave it a little taste, and I tasted it. I'm like, I said, I don't really think that's going to work very well. And he goes, well, why is that? And I said, because the potato chips will dry out the brisket. He goes, the potato chips? I said, that's ground up barbecue Lay's potato chips is what that is right there. He goes, how'd you know that? I said, because I know what barbecue Lay's potato chips taste like, and that's it. He goes, well, the head honcho thinks it's going to be our secret weapon. I said, great, let me know how you do. He never called me. So I looked up, because you can look up, results for all those competitions. And I looked it up, and it was 312, I think, out of 330 that were turned in. So, like I figured it was probably pretty darn dry. But they try all kinds of stuff. It's amazing some of the things people come up with.
So for your business continuing to grow, you just need to continue to find new markets.
Yep.
And so grocery stores here in Salina, I want to go out and buy it. Where do I need to go here?
If you want to go get it, Smoky River Meats carries all 10 rubs there. They were carrying it at the Prairie Land Market, but they only wanted to do a couple, and it's different clientele, I think. But also Salina Outdoors, the new store in the mall, he does carry it as well. But I sell a lot of rub at Smoky River Meats. They've been doing real well. As far as expansion, the plan for this year is we're launching a new website here in another couple of months. Kind of updated, the one now works, it's fine. I take orders on it every day, but there's a product that's not on there just simply because I haven't had the time to do it. So I enlisted my youngest son. He's a senior in high school, and he's all into computer stuff. So I said, hey, Evan, build it. So he did all the photos and all that stuff. It turned out pretty nice. I've seen bits and pieces of it. So we're going to launch that here pretty soon. The marketing on that's that's my shortcoming is the YouTube and the Facebook, and I'm not into that stuff. Don't really want to be into that stuff. My oldest daughter, she's actually the reason this company started as far as the rub line goes. Her rub was the first one. All of our rubs, I left this part out as far as the origins of the names and stuff. Back in 2019, before we came up with Steakhouse Seven, I was trying to figure out a name for it. If I could ever pull this off, what would I call it? So, my wife says, well, there's me and you and 5 kids, so something with 7 in it. And I'm like, okay, kind of. And then I went to a Bible study, and it was about numbers in the Bible. And so if you know your Bible, the number 7 is for completion or perfection. So when they said that, I thought, there you go. That's it right there, because you could use it either way, but it's a good way to honor God and to honor your family. So that's kind of why we called it that. But Tristan, when she was a senior in high school, she, which was 2016, came to me and said she wants pulled pork for graduation. So, of course, I'm going to do pulled pork for graduation. But she says, can you make a new rub? You've been using the same one for years now. Can you make something new? I said, sure, do that. So I made a couple samples up and I let her taste them. Yeah. She goes, oh yeah, that's really, really good. So that's what we ended up with. Well, everybody at the graduation party was doing it on, went nuts over it. You know, and I'm thinking, I was really shocked that people liked it that much. I mean, you just really thought I invented wine or something. It was really,
Sliced bread.
it was really great. So I said, well, shoot, I can give you some, you know. So I make a batch of it up and I put some of those Ziploc sandwich bag and hand it to them, you know. And then we would do those cooks at Charlotte Ranch. And same thing, people were coming up to me and saying, wow, what rub did you use on that? So, well, that's what I make. And so about that time, I figured out, you know, maybe I can make it, maybe get my cost back at least, you know. But when we launched the company, that was the very first rub, was Tristan's pork rub. And all the kids, so there's 5 kids, and they all had a hand in some way, shape, or form of the rub. We kind of went in age, you know, but it was really, that was the fun process was, you know, like Ethan, he's our oldest son and he's really loves chicken, you know, so he and I played with a chicken rub. You know, well, he's a foodie, which that's a bad thing because there's 16 different things in that rub, you know, just because what if we did this? What if we added that? You know, so yeah, it's one of the lengthiest ones to make because it's got so much stuff in it. When we got done with all the kids, then Tristan gets married and I asked her husband, I said, so Mark, I said, it's your turn. What kind of rub you want? He goes, oh, you know, there's that spicy rub. It's called Slap Your Mama rub, the seasoning. I said, yeah, I've heard of it. And he goes, well, you don't like it? And I said, yeah, it's kind of bland. It's heat, waiter. So this is where he had a say in his rub was I made the base recipe and I added Scotch bonnet pepper because that's quite a bit hotter than cayenne. So we started adding that, and I said, I'm going to give you 3 versions with incrementally more pepper in it. And you tell me when to stop. And so we made batch 1, 2, and 3, and he said, that's pretty good, but let's keep going. So we went 4, 5, and 6. I tapped out at 4. So he said, yeah, version 6 is, I think, right where we need to be. So and it's depending on how much spice you like, and that's pretty warm, but there's a lot of people say, well, that's okay. It's nothing really terrible. So everybody's kind of like Coke and Pepsi. Everybody's got their own opinion on how it goes. So that's the fun ways we do this. Like the burger rub, Evan, the youngest one, who graduates here in 10 days, he, that was the last rub we added before Marcus, and we made like, I think 5 different versions of that before he signed off on it, you know, so that's been the fun process of all this thing. And then I filled in with whatever, you know, we didn't have a rib rub at that point. We didn't have a cocoa coffee rub that I wanted to try. So that's just all called either a smokehouse or just cocoa coffee rub, you know, nothing crazy, but that's kind of how that all came about as far as the names. So.
Is there a core set of ingredients that has to be in a rub?
No. No, because I've got some that have salt, some that don't have salt, some that have paprika, and some that don't. Yeah, it's all over the board, really. There's, you know, paprika is what a lot of people use because it is what gives it the red appearance. Okay? But paprika on its own, now I use a really good smoked paprika. It still isn't, to me, doesn't have a ton of flavor, you know. It's matter of fact, I had it in the steak rub and I took it out of the steak rub because I really didn't care for the flavor. It was imparting with other things, maybe clashing, kind of like that wine and smoke battle. So I took it out of the steak rub and people said, oh, wow, what'd you do? Because that's way better. So we tweak stuff like that, you know, and every one of these have gone before a taste testing panel. I started off with friends and figured out that wasn't going to work. You know, they just, oh yeah, it's awesome. You know, look, to me, it tastes like crap. So we're going to go do something else, you know, but eventually landed on some people that were kind of customers over Manhattan that I said, above all else, I need honesty. You know, that's all I need here. I don't need to be your friend. So you don't need to tell me that it's great when it's not. I need you want to help me the most, tell me the truth. you know, and I've got an aunt that's capable of doing that too. You know, we did a wedding here a while back, and I said, you can have some of that if you promise to tell me the truth of how it comes out. And she said, it's just that much on the too dry side. You know, well, I didn't want it spongy and wet either, but it's kind of the challenge of reheating products, you know, like meat. So, but no, there's, to answer your question, there's no gotta have this. So, go ahead. I was gonna say if you look on a lot of commercial rubs out there, there's a lot of salt. I think off the top of my head, if I remember right, there's 2 of my rubs that do not qualify for low sodium. I think the steak rub and the burger rub have too much salt to be considered low sodium, but all the rest of them are. Because salt is generally used just as a filler. It's a way to add weight. It's cheap. It's the cheapest thing I can put in a rub is salt. You know, but obviously too much of it, and it's terrible on the taste. So,
Is there a difference between grass-fed and grain-fed? Pork, beef, goat?
my family ranches and farms, so I guess I have not been able to tell the difference between grass-fed and grain-fed if they're both finished well. There's a big difference between well-finished grain-fed beef and crap-finished grain-fed beef, you know, and that's where that guy that's doing the finishing really has to know his stuff. But I've had grass-fed beef a few times and did not discern a whole lot of difference when you take out the fat. Usually when I'm looking at a steak, like if I went to a meat market in Kansas City, it was a huge meat market, and they had the Wagyu, they had the grass-fed and the grain-fed and all that stuff, and you can tell there was not quite as much marbling in that grass-fed beef, and fat is flavor. May not be great for your heart, but it's flavor. So I've never been able, now Wagyu, you can definitely.
What about your rubs? Would you just use the same rub for grass-fed and grain-fed?
Yeah. My rubs are all protein specific. I've never believed in a one rub does it all, because that's a compromise somewhere. So when we set out to make these rubs, I thought of flavors that would go good with pork, flavors that would go good with chicken, poultry, fish, on down the line. So the kid rubs, so it's Tristan's pork rub, Ethan's chicken rub, Emily's fish rub, Travis's steak rub, Evan's burger rub. They've all got components in there that accentuate that type of protein. So doesn't mean you can't use the fish rub on ribs, but I don't think it's going to be near as good as the rib rub. The rib rub's won competitions. I've got people that buy it, use it. Kind of goes back to what you were saying about, is that a market? A guy came up to me and told me that he uses rib rub in this competition and won. Now, to be fair, there was some liquid things he added to it, so it wasn't just my rub.
Yeah.
But that's becoming one of the bigger sellers of our line. So,
in terms of your general business, you mentioned that, you know, you have a business background and doing different types of jobs. For somebody starting up a business, and you've got a unique business, so it's not like the average shopkeeper
right.
You're making. And what kind of business recommendations in terms of importance, the things that are really important? Is it accounting? Is it finance? Is it what?
Yeah.
Give us some thoughts on that.
My thoughts on that, the biggest thing, and I did this, but the biggest thing is to have a business plan. And it's first and foremost, because you've got to write all that down and you've got to get all that figured out in your head. You can say, well, I'm going to make rubs and make $1 million. Well, that's great, but how are you going to get there? And that's what the business plan does. It was kind of tough because I tried to do it on my own at first. Then I enlisted some help and got that done. And and it needs to be a continual thing. I really should sit down this fall, actually winter, and rewrite mine. That's the one good and bad thing about this business is it has a seasonal streak to it, because only the hardcore people are smoking and barbecuing in January, February. You know, they might start coming out in March with the woodchuck or whatever, but for the most part, sales start picking up in April. and explode. And then when we get to Christmas time, I'm buried, you know, and I'm begging for Christmas to get here because like after the first year, it just shuts off. You know, you'll be at 15 online orders a day, and you do these festivals like we were talking earlier. And when I took that 100 packages of sampler packs, I really thought that would get me through that one and the next week's show. Well, and I did that show by myself. Usually my wife tries to come along and help it. I said, not only do I not have any for tomorrow, I don't have any for next weekend when we were going to be at, let's see, that was at Sugar Mound, so Maple Leaf would have been the next one. And so get a plan. Business plan is the most important part of it. Decide whether you're going to, if you're going to cash flow or finance it. Like I said, I cash flowed everything I did. I strongly recommend that. It's not worth losing your house over. It's not worth losing a marriage over. My wife's so glad that I'm not making her rub at her house right now because I was killing her little KitchenAid. That was all back when I was selling at farmers markets. I could do all that legally. And even today, if I wanted to just make rub here and sell it at the store and then make rub at home and take it to the farmers market, that's all legal. But I can make a 30-pound batch here, which I do, and then make a maybe 1-pound batch in her little 5-quart kitchen, 4-quart kitchen. But yeah, the business plan is a big thing. If you don't have that experience, I think mentoring, you know, if you can, next door neighbor, doesn't matter, family members, somebody that's kind of been through the business type thing. They know their banker. You know, bankers usually are good for some financial advice that you can trust. But yeah, the business plan is the biggest thing, and the location. If it's something that can be done, like I mentioned earlier, this place is the huge reason why this has been able to sustain itself and grow. Where we're actually considering building a building this fall out where I live, because it's a 30-mile drive for me to come here. It's not a big deal, you know, because you can come here and spend a couple hours, you know, and do all that. And there's other things. I mean, my daughter lives here and all that, so there's shopping to do here. So it's not like you're only coming here to do that. But it would be a lot easier to walk out of the house and walk 50 yards to a building and start up. And fortunately, where I live, I've got 100 and some acres to play with, so I can put the building up wherever I want. But that's something we're looking at. And that also would allow us to expand on the catering thing. So.
How long have you been here?
2 years?
Yeah, I think it's been 2 years.
Yeah. 2020, I wasn't here. I think we were all 21 and 22.
You just use the kitchen?
Yes,
You do?
yes.
The Hobart mixer.
What's that?
The Hobart mixer and the
Yeah,
closet.
I use those 2 tables, that mixer, and the closet that she gave me. And the closet's where I store all the spices.
Yeah.
So
What do you do about insurance?
I have a policy. When I started, my homeowner policy covered my farmers market stuff. But when we dove into getting into the grocery stores, now Wes Country Mart never asked about anything for insurance. But I ended up this last June, got an actual business policy through Farm Bureau for actually making rub. It's like a $3 million policy, I think, because some of the grocery store chains, I've been kind of deliberate in where I've planted my stuff. Like, for example, the grocery store in Lindsborg is White's Food Liner. Well, they're the furthest north east out of their chain. I think they got 9 or 10 stores. So it just so happens the manager of that store and I went to high school together in the first. So, but Jeff is helping me try to get established in that entire chain. Same thing with West Country Mart. They're the furthest west the Country Mart chain goes. So if Chris can help me get into that and do all the, I don't know how many Country Mart stores there are in Kansas and Missouri, there's a lot of them. And same thing with Clay Center, the Apple Mart stores, that's as far south. So we're kind of centrally located where I can hit it all. So that's kind of the growth plan for the wholesale side. And then the growth on our festivals is we did 12 festivals last year. I think we're doing 16 festivals this year. So
has the Commerce Department or Department of Ag?
well, I have to work with the Department of Ag. They do all my licensing. They've been real great. They've been fantastic on questions and well, even things like helping me be compliant with the FDA on my labeling. I'm categorized as a small producer, so technically I don't need to have nutritional label on my jar, but I figured at some point it's coming anyway. And there's some places that just actually demand it, that it needs not only the ingredient list, but they want the nutritional label and they want barcode. The barcode, I already had that done for Wes and those guys. But there's some of the stores, the hotel across the street, they require a nutritional label. So that was kind of what prompted me to get that part of it done. But that's all things that the Department of Ag's helped with to make sure I'm compliant with everybody. Because above all else, I like sleeping good at night. I don't want to worry about being out of sorts with anybody or anything and you should be doing this and I know I should be doing this, but I'm not. So I love being compliant. So.
You looked at their I don't know if it's made in Kansas.
Made in Kansas, yes.
Yeah.
I've had talks with them. I did the Tulip Festival in Wamego a couple weeks ago, and they actually had somebody stop by. I was a member with them last year, and that's an avenue that it's on the list to do, and that's the bad side about being a one-man show.
One-man show.
You got to triage stuff every day and be super flexible on your schedule. But that is something that I've talked to them about. It has helped in some respects, like Wilkins General Store in Abilene. They sell nothing but made in Kansas product, and that is where they found me. And so they sell my product there. And I was a little worried at first. I mean, I'm awful loyal to my stores, and Chris gave me my start. It was the very first store that I started in, and the last thing I wanted to do was have another store compete with him in his own town. But I went in and talked to Chris, and I said, I really don't think they're going to get in your hair too much because this is a totally different clientele. Everybody that wants groceries comes to you. Maybe they'll go to Zai's, but they come to you. Everybody that stops at the store is probably traveling by on the interstate because that's what it's marketed as. That's the audience they're trying to hit. He says, oh, I think that'll be fine. So he gave me the blessing, and I set those guys up. But that's exactly where that made in Kansas. From I'm also in a place out by Wilson it's actually sadly going to close, but it's the same kind of thing, a made in Kansas deal. But unfortunately, they own the building, but they don't own the ground that it's on. And somebody's going to kill the guy that owns the ground is going to put a truck stop there. And that building's, I fail to understand how that ever happened. How you could own a building and not the ground it's on. But anyway, they've been doing really good, but that's coming to an end out there. So. Kansas Originals is the name of that place, I think. Yep. Yeah, it's when you're westbound going to Colorado, you drive right by it. And they sent me an email. Well, they sent everybody an email. They reduced everybody's membership. I wasn't on that plan with them. It's been tough for me to track. I had another store that did it by commission, and that didn't work out so slick because count problems and then me trying to prove they're wrong. And I don't want any bad feelings over it, so I don't do it anymore. But they said they wanted to sell it. I said, then I'll sell it to you at wholesale price and you sell it, because if you've got skin in the game, you'll sell it, before worrying about whether I'm going to get my cut out of the deal. So that's how I went with them, but I think they don't expect to be open by the end of the year. So.
Well, we sure love having you at the temple, and anyone that's listening, I guess, and is thinking of starting something, Shannon is a mentor as well, and he'll help with navigate the USDA, and he'll sit down and help you think through your plan.
Yeah.
We've got Project Open to help you with your business plan. So.
Yeah, it's been a real learning curve. I took a class, it would have been last fall, and it was all about how to get into the retail store game. And it cost a little bit to take this class, but the lady that was putting it on, she has been the marketing manager for ice cream brands that you've heard of. And I learned the thing I took away from that was not how to break into that market and how to play that game, was that I don't want to play that game. I don't, the profit margin on the retail side is really good, but when you start playing the game of selling it to a distributor we're talking on the scale that would service Dillon's, Kroger's, you know, that it was kind of a good learning experience with Steve and Chris over at West, but they aren't playing by the same rules that Dillon's is. They don't do it the same way. When you go into a big store, then you basically buy that real estate. And when they have those sales, yeah. When they, and Chris, over there at West, you know, I got a whole end cap, got 2 shelves, 24 inches wide, and it holds all my rubs just fine. It's right next to the barbecue sauces. It's perfect. I mean, it is. A little side story. My wife, she's a nurse in Abilene, so she stopped there one night to get something, and I said, "Hey, while you're there, just take a quick inventory, see if I need to take them anything." Okay, so she goes back there and looks, and she says, "Well, you need this, this, and this." You know, 3 rubs that they were getting low on. And she goes, "I'm not very happy." And I said, "Oh, really? Why is that?" She says, "Because they got your stuff right next to Kinder's and all these other Blues Hogs rub." And I said, "Yeah, that's fantastic, isn't it?" I said, "These are the big boys. And my rub's right next to them. And I'm obviously still selling because you tell me I need to take 3 more cases of rub there." I said, "That's cool, I think," you know. So anyway, where was that before I went on a little side tangent?
I didn't realize you had to buy
Yes,
yourself.
yes, you do have to buy a shelf space. And when you see them do sales, the producer is the one paying that 50 cents or that dollar or whatever deal is. And then some of them, like she said, for the ice cream thing, they demanded that she have 2 demonstrations a year. And she did more East Coast stuff, you know, so things are on a bigger scale out there even. But, you know, they had to pay somebody to sit there and give free samples of ice cream all day, 2 times a year. And when they had a sale, they had to pay that difference. They reimbursed the grocery store. And everybody wants a cut. So instead of making something like an 80% margin on it, now you're maybe going to make 20%, maybe. So it's tough to get into that deal. And I figured if I would invest that time on the website and marketing and sell it at retail, it'd be a lot better deal, just all the way around. So I like having the local connection. I like going into West and cleaning in, you know, displays get kind of out of whack, you know, from people playing with it, kids touching it and stuff. I like going in there and squaring things up and talking to the public, you know. My wife hates to go anywhere with me wearing a Steakhouse Seven shirt now because, like, "Oh, really? You're the one that makes that?" That's kind of cool, you know. It's kind of a little side payoff type thing. So.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay. My pleasure.
Great.
Appreciate your time.
We'll go and buy some.
Yeah. I need to try the smoked salt.
Yeah, I'll have to get you some.
Really good. And smoked honey.
I've got a